welcome back to another episode of Living LFTD with Brenton Ross. We took a brief little hiatus. We put up a hangar tour video. We had a lot of people asking for that. So if you haven't checked that out, go check that out. But we have a very special guest today, LaRosa. Like how I said that. I brought these for you. If we only could sell one product, that would be it. That's our greens. I'm going to start giving that to every guest. I annoy all my friends and family with it just because I used to get sick all the freaking time. And now that I take my greens every day, it has been a game changer. So I wanted to give that to you. I know that's also a plug for Lifted, but man, like it has helped me so much tremendously. So anyways, normally I do the intro on the person. Okay. So far in our first 11 episodes, I've known everybody very, very well to the point that I could just off the riff do an intro. I don't know you as well, which is also a big part of why I'm looking forward to this, is because I get to learn a lot of things about you. Even with some of the guys that I've known for years and years and done this, I have learned things that I did not know about them, but especially this kind of going into fresh and a lot of this stuff. I've been really excited and looking forward to this all week. So instead of me doing your intro, I want you to kind of tell me, like, I mean, you got military, you got your jiu-jitsu, you got your business. Like, who are you? Who's Nicholas LaRosa?
I never served in the military or law enforcement, but I do teach a lot of military and law enforcement.
Okay.
But first off, thank you for having me. Absolutely. I appreciate it, and thank you for this. But I do have one question, and this will also be good for the viewers. How do I mix this with water or smoothie?
One scoop, water, 30 seconds, done. My hack though, I just throw it with OJ.
Interesting.
It's amazing.
Okay. I'm going to try that then.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a try tonight.
I literally just take one of those little, you know, the little spinner guys?
Yeah, the
you know
hand mixers.
Yeah. Scoop in there, spin that up, kill it, done. That's my go-to every day. It's still good with water. It has that natural berry because it's all naturally flavored. But when you throw it with OJ, that's the move right there.
Get a little sweet with it.
Yeah, it just blends perfectly.
Heck yeah.
Too.
Thank you, man.
So,
I appreciate that.
absolutely.
Seriously. And again, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
I'm Nicholas LaRosa. 28 years old. I have 3 college degrees, EMT certification, bunch of ALS certifications, 2nd degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 2nd degree black belt in Judo. I have almost 20 years of experience in martial arts, ranging from 3 different styles of karate, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, wrestling, Muay Thai, boxing, mixed martial arts, Eskrima, Kali, Salat, etc. I've been teaching for 12 years. I own a company called LaRosa Training Services.
Okay.
What I do with that is I primarily teach one-on-one private lessons for pre-hospital medicine, self-defense ranging from martial arts and firearms. And what I primarily focus on in my clientele is federal, state, and local city or county law enforcement.
So as I told you before we started, that's why I let him do that, because that list was amazing. Okay. Are you from here?
I am from here. Yeah. Born and raised Phoenix, Arizona. I currently live in Glendale.
Okay. And your business is over on the west side too,
Yep.
correct?
My business is North Glendale, but I teach all over the United States. I teach seminars and public classes, like some open enrollment style. And then I have taught overseas, and I actually just landed 2 new contracts. I will be going overseas again here shortly.
Really?
To Asia to go teach for specific agencies within 2 different countries.
Did they just find you, or how does that even play
It's all
out?
networking. So
Really?
So I've been in business for 12 years, and I like to think I do fairly well for myself. I don't even have a website.
Okay.
I do my private training out of my house. I don't even have like a place of business per se. It's all through networking. All through networking. Word of mouth.
That's incredible. I love that because it's based on the experience that they've had with you, and then they go tell people about it, you know?
Exactly.
Like, I think that word of mouth networking can sometimes be misconstrued as, I just got to go tell everybody and everybody get them talking about it. But if you just treat people right and do things the right way and get people great results, then that's where the real word of mouth that's effective, that builds your business, kicks into play.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the jiu-jitsu world, did you wrestle as a kid, or like, did you always know you wanted to do that? Like, how does that even come into play, man?
So here's a long story.
It's fine.
This will be great. I had a very good household. My parents cared for me.
Yeah.
You know, I had a roof over my head, food on the table every night, no complaints there, nothing like that. But my parents were not in a very healthy relationship.
Okay.
So there was like a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing, a lot of like splitting up, getting back together. A couple times there was like law enforcement incidents. My older sister was in prison at the time as I was growing up.
Okay.
And my second oldest sister She got married, ran away to North Carolina to a Marine. And then my brother and I, we only have, I think it's like 7 years apart. Him and I fought a lot when I was a kid. We didn't really get along. So a little backtrack on that is I am my father's only child. And so all my siblings, we have a different dad.
Gotcha.
But we don't look at it like that. Like now, like me and my siblings are really, really tight. We have like a very loving, caring relationship.
Exactly what you mean. I had 2 half brothers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you know how it goes. In the beginning, it's like a little animosity type deal. But once you get older and you start to develop that relationship. So I had a lot of trauma as a kid, not like physical abuse or anything like that, but just like seeing it and stuff. So, you know, I started to act out, not doing anything I would say super violent per se, but as I started to get older, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, I started hanging around not the best of crowd of individuals that were doing legitimate criminal activity.
Okay.
And what ended up happening, I ended up getting caught up in some form of like vandalism, and I got in trouble for that. And what ended up happening with that is we got everything expunged. We had a good lawyer and the whole 9.
Okay.
But I ended up having to do like 100 hours of community service. I had to do, my parents had to pay the fines.
Of course.
And then I was on probation for a year. And like being like a 12-year-old on probation is like a little hardcore, you know?
Sure.
At least in my opinion.
That's a lot.
At that time. And
for vandalism?
Yeah, it was
that
for vandalism.
That seems pretty intense. I think he was trying
vandalism on a school.
Make an example of you, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe they thought if they could get to you at that age and really...
A lot of it is because they tried to file the same charges on the same 3 on all of us. It was 3 other children or kids.
Yeah.
Which they were already had previous, you know, criminal record.
Okay.
In and out of juvie and the whole 9. So obviously my parents weren't very happy with me with that, and I wasn't too happy with myself because, you know, now I have to do this. I have to go do community service on weekends, and I'm doing community service alongside like legit criminals, like 14, 15, anyone who's basically under the age of 18 who has committed like a legitimate crime. And at that time, still not a criminal. I just got caught up in the middle of something where I was like, oh my gosh, right?
Sure.
So I had a lot of anger when I was a kid, and I really enjoyed fighting. That was like my outlet. I didn't have any formal training or anything like that. Just grew up, you know, wrestling with my dad, fighting with my older brother, etc.
And he was 7 years older than you.
Yeah.
So that's a good experience.
Exactly. Right? And he wrestled, and he ended up, you know, joining the military and what have you. But I had a above ground pool in my backyard.
Okay.
And it was like stripped out, and it was filled with like sand. Why? I don't know. And this is
big old sandbox.
Exactly. And this is probably like 2007.
Every cat in the neighborhood was burying its turds in your guys'
No, actually, it's worse. It's worse than that.
Okay.
So this is like 2007, 2008. This is like when MySpace was still a thing.
Yeah.
Facebook wasn't a thing yet.
Did you have Zanga ever?
No, I didn't have that.
That was big in the Midwest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We used to get kids from school over to my house on Fridays, and we would do a fight club.
In the sandbox.
Because it was an above ground pool, right? And it was shaped like almost like an octagon, and it's filled with sand.
Kidding. Yeah.
And so what we would do is film it and throw it on MySpace. And we would have kids, ranging from 12 to 16 years old.
Here's your original Kimbo Slice.
Yes. And man, there was some brutal fights in that backyard.
I bet.
No rules. Eye gouging, hair pulling, biting, groin stomping, curb stomping, 2-on-1s, 3-on-1s. Whatever. If anyone had beef, settle it at my house. It was like, hey, we're going to LaRosa's house on Friday. We're like, we're going to handle this.
Wow.
Right? And we were making money off of it. We were making money, you know? What ended up happening is I ended up fighting someone, and I hurt them very badly. And the individual's parents tried to sue my parents, but it was filmed. And it showed him throwing the first punch at me on my property. And even though it was an organized thing, it's not actually sanctioned.
Sure.
Right? Because it's just kids.
Yeah.
So the lawsuit got dropped because it was actually self-defense.
Sure.
But that was a violation of my probation for fighting. And they were like, hey, you're going to look at doing jail time. Wow. And we ended up, you know, working through the kinks, ended up not going to jail or anything like that. But my parents are like, hey, what are we going to do with you?
Yeah.
Like, you are throwing your life away. You're going to end up like your older sister. You're going to end up in prison. Like, what? Like, you have so much potential. Like, why are you doing this? And I basically essentially 12 years old, I trauma dumped on my parents. I'm like, you guys are always fighting, blah, 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 blah. Like, this is
But you had that awareness in you at 12 years old to understand where it was coming from?
super weird. And my parents still talk about it to this day. Like, I've always been very emotionally mature and always had like a lot of empathy and like humility.
I could tell when I met you right away.
Thank you. And so I look my parents in the eyes and I say, since I like fighting so much, why don't I start doing it legally? Coming out of the words of like a 12-year-old. And they're like, okay. So my brother's friend from high school, his uncle owned a boxing gym in the area. I got signed up, started doing boxing. This was like after my first week of boxing there. It's going very well. This individual, it was a 2-story gym, walks down to the first floor, which is where the boxing was, comes up to me, and for some reason he took a liking to me. I've never even spoke to this individual. He just like, I like this kid. So he walks up to me and he goes, hey, have you ever thought about doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And I go, I don't even know what that is. I have no idea what that is. And he goes, oh, come with me, I'll show you. I'm like, okay.
Now at this time you're about what, 13-ish?
I'm like
then?
12.
Okay.
I'm still like 12.
And then what was your build at that phase? Because for boxing they're wanting that reach and everything. They maybe look at you and saw, okay, this guy is going to be suited for jiu-jitsu. Or?
I was a little guy. I was a very little guy. I was at that time maybe like 5'2", 5'3", like maybe 100 pounds.
Yeah.
I was never like a big person.
Okay.
Now, I mean, I filled out a little bit. I'm like 5'6", 5'7",
but just from like
180.
a successful build for that sport itself, that's going to be, that would be unique for boxing. So maybe he saw that.
He's like tall, lanky, very agile.
Reach is huge.
And I never had like a super long reach.
Yeah.
So he takes me upstairs and he goes, take your shoes off, step on the mat. I'm like, what is going on right now? So I get on the mat, grabs me, throws me on the ground, and starts strangling me, almost near unconscious.
You don't hardly know.
Spitting out
you don't hardly know this guy.
I don't even know this guy.
That's a little odd.
And I've never done anything like. And mind you, I'm a child.
Yeah.
He releases, and I'm like holding my throat, and I'm coughing. I'm like, oh my god,
the hell was that?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I'm in shock. And he's like chuckling. He's like, oh, he goes, that's cool, huh? And I was like, yeah. I was like, what was it? And he goes, that's jiu-jitsu. He's like, you want to learn? And I was like, yeah, I want to learn that. And he ended up becoming my first jiu-jitsu
instructor. I think that was a huge moment where some kids would have absolutely panicked and broke and freaked out, and instead it awakens like that. You're already aware of it because you're uniquely mature emotionally for your age.
I had just never seen anything like that before, right? Like we grew up when I was a kid, like watching WWE, and like UFC wasn't like it was around obviously, but it wasn't like huge at that time. It was more like Pride. I don't know if you remember the Pride fighting. We used to watch a lot of that. And I was just like, I want to learn that. So I ended up training under that instructor for 3 years. Really? So my parents would drop me off Monday through Friday after school. I was doing like boxing like 2 days a week. The
guy that flipped you ended up being your coach.
Yeah, he was the Brazilian.
That's a unique marketing strategy. You just go start hurting people and be like, hey, you don't want that to happen anymore? Pay me. I'll teach you how.
He was the welter and middleweight champion for Rage in the Cage and some other
remember
company.
Rage in the Cage.
And yeah, he had like a judo background, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, karate, Kali, and Muay Thai.
Okay.
So I was training all that stuff under him, like 4 days a week, 3 days a week, and then I was doing boxing 2 days a week.
Okay.
And so I started, getting into like the martial arts, obviously, and this is where I'm like really like diving deep. I'm like, this is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Not getting in any more trouble.
Striking with wrestling. Yeah. Becoming basically a UFC fighter in the making is what you're doing. Yeah.
So I completely changed my friend group. I started like reading up on like fitness and like diet, hydration, and then I started competing. This is like, I think 8th grade or freshman year, I have like my first competition.
Okay.
And I got hooked, and that's all I was doing. Something happened with him.
Were you successful right away? Did you do well in those first tournaments?
First competition, no. Second competition, yes. My first competition, I had like a nervous freak out.
To get the nerves out of the way.
I like froze.
Yeah.
Right? Like I did like a couple little things. Yeah. But I pretty much got dominated. I didn't get submitted. I ended up losing on points, and I only got one match. But
you had to get that rep in to just see what it was like.
And that's what he told me. He's like, we got to throw you in the deep end. We got to get rid of those nerves. They call them mat nerves. And once you do it one time, you're going to be good the rest of the time.
Gotcha.
And then, as you'll see, it ended up leading into a little bit of success. So, freshman year rolls around, and I'm still doing it. And something ended up happening legally with him. And he ended up leaving that gym and going away. And so I was like, oh man, I don't have a place to train anymore.
He was probably flipping 12-year-olds on mats.
No, he had criminal history. I don't want to speak too much on it.
No, don't. No, I'm just making light of it.
He was a really good guy. He was a really good guy, man. He mentored me a lot, and he knew what I was going through, and he went through similar stuff when he was younger. He helped me a lot. That guy was, there was a lot of people didn't like him because of his background and stuff, but
there's some people with criminal backgrounds that are great people.
He was a good mentor. He's what I needed at that time, legitimately. Yeah. And literally 180'd me, you know? And so I ended up becoming friends with a lot of the wrestlers, and we ended up buying mats. My parents buy me some mats, and we put them in my living room. And so now I have people coming over. We're like cross training. I'm showing them like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Muay Thai, boxing. And they're like, oh, well, we'll show you wrestling. And then we had like this training group in my living room because I wasn't training at a gym anymore. Again, I ended up getting hooked up. I wouldn't say with bad people this time, but like people like me that were like scrappy and wanted to fight. We restarted the fight club, but this time it was for training, because what we would do is we would wear mouthpieces, groin protectors, and MMA gloves, like
maybe some waivers.
6 ounces.
So nobody can sue anybody either. That
yeah, a 14-year-old, 15-year-old didn't know that.
Sign this
so
on a napkin.
Again, man, we used to do fights in my living room, full-blown fist fights.
What was your parents at when this would go on?
So my mom was in pharmacy school, and then my dad's a truck driver, so he was always
so you got the house.
I had, dude, I've pretty much lived on my own, like, since I was like a child, right? My dad's always been a truck driver since I was born. He's always out on the road. My brother was in the military. My other sister was living, I don't know where. The other one was in prison. And then my mom was like work, school, or, you know, just working. And so I pretty much had the house to myself. And what kind of mischief could we get in, right? So I wasn't, you know, I wasn't out like gang banging or doing drugs or anything like that. But yeah, we were having full-blown fights in my living room on Fridays. Like, it was like a repeat, you know? And now it's with some people that are 18 years old because some are seniors, right? But it was a good learning experience. My parents ended up finding out what we were doing, and they were actually okay with it. They were okay with it. As long as, like, we had rules and there was people to, like, stop it and, like, the whole nine. Like, they were okay with it for a little bit. Then we ended up, TV got broken.
I was getting ready to say something has to get damaged.
Broken. We had 2 heavyweight wrestlers go at it in my living room. I'm talking 16-year-olds that are like 350 pounds. They're super heavy.
Buddy.
Okay. And my TV gets obliterated. And yeah, that was the end of that.
I bet.
But at that time, while I was still training out of my house, I had a private instructor for a little bit who would come to my house and work with me and some of the wrestlers, and we'd pay him cash. I ended up having my first MMA fight when I was 15. And then I had my second MMA fight when I was 16. And by then I've already had numerous Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo competitions under my belt. And so I was confident enough. I was like, oh, I want to go to another gym because I really like fighting like competitively, that I want to take this like as far as I think I can. And so that's when I ended up finding my future home gym for quite a while. And I was training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu there. Muay Thai, MMA, wrestling, etc. And that was the gym where I first started teaching out of. I started teaching kids classes when I was 16 years old. At that gym, I ended up getting promoted to blue belt after 3 months of training there. But mind you, at that point, I've already had 3.5 years of training. So I ended up getting like my blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I started teaching kids classes. I'm doing MMA fights, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitions, etc. And I think it was right around my junior or senior year is when I started traveling and training. Like summer breaks, me and my mom used to always go on vacations. It was like her and I, like bonding time. We'd always go spend like, 10 days somewhere.
My name is Jacob McLaughlin, and I'm the founder of New to Medical Device Sales. Medical device sales is the selling of medical equipment to hospitals, surgeons. They're actually in the surgeries, and the average rep's going to make around $177,000. And what we've been able to do is help people break in about 8 weeks at around $100,000 starting out in the industry. It usually is 5 to 7 interviews, 6 to 12 weeks long in the interview process, and they go up against thousands of people. But that's because you are going to be working with some of the smartest human beings, such as surgeons. You're going to make over 6 figures. You get your car paid for, all your gas paid for, and all your travel paid for. We've been able to help over 2,000 people do this in the last 2 years. Not only do we help people break in to make a difference and change other people's lives, they also get to change their lives. If you're interested in helping people and you're interested in financially becoming free, we can definitely help you. And I think you should check out New to Medical Device Sales, our podcast, while you can also click the link where you guys can learn more about what we do at New to Medical Device Sales. I absolutely love Brenton. I thank him so much for what he's doing for all of you. And I hope you guys keep enjoying the episode.
And I was like, hey, there's like this really good gym in the area that I know about. Cause there's like a competitor there that I follow. Like I want to go drop in, do like a day class or whatever. My mom was all for it. So I was able to train like as a 16, 17-year-old, like in multiple different states, cities, and train with some of like the best black belts in the US. It was great. It was a great learning experience, great networking. I turned 18. At this point, I'm a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, still a senior in high school. And I have my first like paid fight. I fought at Fort McDowell Casino. And I remember, this was funny, none of my people I went to school with were able to attend because you had to be 21 because of the casino. Right. And I remember when I go in there for weigh-ins and check-in, they're like, oh, you're underage, you can't come in. Because I was 18. I go, what are you talking about? I'm one of the fighters. And they're like, no, you're not. Anyways, I had the coach, the promoter come over, everyone, they're like, no, he's fighting. And they're like, what? Like, this isn't legal, blah, blah, blah. The MMA scene in Arizona used to be super shady. Super shady. I'll give you an example. When I had my first MMA fight, I was 15. The person I fought was 19.
You have to fight a minor.
And he had fighting a minor, and he had weight on me. My second MMA fight, someone the same age, had 45 pounds on me.
Ooh, buddy.
Right? So it's super shady business going on. But I do that fight. I get paid. I start making a name for myself. And I'm like, cool.
Did you win that fight at Fort McDowell?
That one I lost by a split decision. Which,
you still held your own, though.
Yeah, I did my own. It was cool. Good learning experience. That's the way I looked at all the losses. I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm still so young. Like, I don't really care.
Yeah, I love that.
And I got paid, and I thought that was the coolest thing. So I'm like, I'm 18.
I got paid. I don't think I really lost.
Yeah, I was like, it's awesome, right? And I'm still in high school, and everyone's like, oh, like
paid fighter.
Cool.
Oh yeah. I can see.
So I graduate a couple months later, and some kids are going off to college, or they're going to go into the military and all this, and I'm like, I'm just going to go pro. I was like, I'm just going to go pro, and I'm going to continue teaching. So I already have an established job there teaching. So once I turned 18, that's when I was able to start teaching the adult classes. And that's when I started networking and teaching different individuals, because it was an open enrollment gym. You could sign up, do like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu like 4 days a week or what have you. So I'm teaching kids classes, I'm teaching adult classes, gi and no gi. I started assisting with like the Muay Thai program. Years later, I implemented a judo program, the competition team, etc. I was like 18, 19 years old. I was already graduated for maybe 6 or 7 months. And I wanted to pursue education, but I didn't really know what. So I just signed up for community college. I was going to Glendale Community College. And I was like, I think I want to study like criminal justice or something. And, I did like 1 or 2 semesters. My grades weren't the best because I didn't take it seriously. Because my focus was just in teaching and training and fighting. So I ended up dropping out of that I dropped out after a year, and I was like, well, now I have to go like full blown with this. So I ended up getting like my brown belt. I became the youngest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt at like age 21. I got interviewed on NBC Sports for that. At that time, I was already competing professionally. I was doing super fights, which is like where they match you up with another individual way ahead of time. They make like the fight poster.
I see. Okay.
You're going to do a jiu-jitsu match.
They can promote it and build
Here's going to be the rule set. Yeah, there's promotion. You could sell tickets, or some of them was like, hey, here's the set fee, win or lose, this is what you get paid. Or if you get like submission of the night of the whhole tournament, like you're going to get a bonus. Exactly. So I was doing those, man. I did some out of state. I did some here locally. We did them at Westworld, where they do Barrett Jackson. Pay-per-viewed events.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yep. And then I was doing like some smoker, like amateur MMA fights. I knew I was never going to go pro in MMA. 1, because my main focus was in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. 2, even at an early age, and mind you, this was like 2014, 2015, so there wasn't a whole lot of the studies coming out about traumatic brain injuries and CTE. But I had been training under individuals who were punch drunk. And I noticed that because they're having trouble speaking and slurring, and they're like losing train of thought. And I'm like, man, I really don't want to end up like that. I really don't, man. I want like I want longevity. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I mean, the worst thing that happens is you tap, right? as long as you have the humility, right, and set the ego aside to do so,
it's either
then
that
you're
or
not going to
dislocated shoulders.
Yeah, or you go unconscious, but the rep stops it, and you just wake up from a little 30-second nap. You're fine. And so I was doing all the teaching. I was teaching like 16 classes a week. I was teaching private lessons. I'm still at that point. I think I taught a couple seminars. I was competing regularly. Like that is what was paying my bills on top of like the privates. The classes was like a set fee I was being paid, which was just like enough to cover a couple basic bills and what have you. But right before I got my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I received my Judo black belt January of that year. And then July 2nd is when I received my black belt. That would have been for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That would have been 2018. And about a year later, I leave that gym under not so well terms with the owner / instructor. It was actually worked out really well for me because I had already been doing privates on the side out of my house.
I see.
And so I already had like an established clientele. And at that point, I already had law enforcement contacts that I was teaching at that gym that wanted to continue learning under me. So I said, cool, I'm done competing. I was 23 years old.
Okay.
23 years old. This would have been 2019. When I left that gym, it was March 13th, 2019. Not even 2 weeks later, I have my official LLC, DBA, business license, etc. I got my name, LaRosa Training Services. And I was like, cool, I'm just going to do privates. Because that's honestly where the money's at. And it's less headache on me. And I don't need to go, get a secure building to teach large scale classes, right? Private lessons, in my opinion, is where the money making is. And then I can build a relationship with that student, client, etc. And so I was doing that out of my house.
Is there any element to that? You know how much it meant to you as a kid that you wanted to cut a chance to reciprocate that in other people's lives?
Yeah, that actually ran through my mind a lot. So we could backtrack on that. So when I was teaching kids classes, when I was at that school, I was working with kids. A lot of the kids were special needs, which helped develop me as a better instructor. Because the way I explain this, and I'm not saying this as like a slur or anything like that, but the way I would explain to the other instructors that were coming up and learning from me or like apprenticing, I explained it to them. I said, if I can teach a 4 or 5-year-old who has autism how to do an armbar, then I can teach a 30-year-old who is stable to do an armbar, no problem.
Sure.
Right? So that helped develop me as an instructor. But then I was also working with children and teenagers who were going down a similar path that I went down, man. They were doing substance abuse or, getting in fights with fist fights with their parents, running away from home. One of them already had like a juvenile record, etc. And, I would set aside with them. I'm like, hey, and they're like, you don't understand. You don't know what I've been through. And I'm like, hey, I do actually. Been down this road.
And they'll listen to you now.
And they did. And, man, their parents would come in and they'd be like, I don't know what you talk to my child about, but they are night and day difference at home. They're turning in their assignments. They're not running away. We're not getting in arguments. We're having dinner at the kitchen table now. Like, can't even make this stuff up. It was really heartwarming. And I was still in high school at that time. And I'm like, wow, I'm actually having an impact on people.
Yeah.
And then, I had a lot of law enforcement I was working with because they would take the classes, and I'm like a senior in high school, and I'm like, yeah, cool. Like I worked with Phoenix Police Department officers last night, and they're like, hey, like the stuff you and, the other professors are showing, like I used on a call last night and no one got hurt, so that was really cool knowing that like I can impact individuals that way. But it's very difficult to impact on a large scale during a class because I'm not able to necessarily give every single individual 100% of my attention because of time constraints.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That's why I really enjoyed private lessons, and I still teach private lessons to this day, is, again, I'm able to develop that relationship with that clientele, that client student. Yes, there is the knowledge transfer of self-defense or pre-hospital medicine, whatever they want to learn that I'm teaching. But it's also like a therapeutic session for them because they have, they're getting their mind off of whatever's going on in their life for a set amount of time, and they're able to talk to someone who listens. So a lot of times when I'm teaching, I'll have people 15, 20 minutes just vent. I don't ask for this. It just happens.
I'm very aware.
And I think it's a trust thing. And I'm sure, again, yeah, you probably have this with your personal training business where you're like, hey, man, let's do this exercise. Here's your set number, sets, reps, etc. And just out of nowhere, man, they'll do what they need to do. And then they just stop, look at you, and they're like, trauma dump. This is what's going on at work. My wife wants to leave me. My kids are getting in trouble. I might lose my house. Like random. And, you know, I'm not like, oh, wow, man, that's crazy. Get back to what we're doing. I don't do that. I stop.
You care.
I listen. Exactly. Because I do care. Because I want to make sure they're okay. You know, like, how can I best help you? Right. I can, you know, only help people so much, obviously. But yeah, you know, one of the best things you could do is active listening, because sometimes that's all people want, is they just want to be heard. And I think martial arts is very important for individuals who are going through such crises like that, because it not only releases the endorphins through exercise.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a holistic effect here between getting them moving and then them opening up. It pairs up.
Exactly. It's that whole fitness thing aspect to it. But it's also self-esteem and confidence development, right? Especially with people who, this is mainly with the children where they get bullied.
Yeah.
And I work with them, and now like their confidence goes through the roof, because they're like, oh, I know how to protect myself. You know, I don't ever teach someone like, hey, this is how you beat someone up. We don't do that.
Yeah.
Or at least
and unless someone's been in those shoes, they don't understand that kid's entire life in those scenarios is them trying to figure out how to avoid certain scenarios or people. It completely dominates their life and their thinking. And then now you give them that self-confidence, they can start actually living life as a normal kid, not having to worry about those things. You're giving them freedom.
Exactly. It's so holistic. I love that term that you use, because it is true. I wrote a published paper, this is a little off topic, but I wrote a published paper about holistic benefits of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for law enforcement officers. And a lot of police chiefs actually read it and gave me a lot of positive feedback. But it's for everybody. Martial arts is for everybody. I mean, I have worked with felons, right? And they're like, hey, man, like, I'm clean. I haven't done crime since. I did my parole. I did my time. I just want to learn martial arts. Like, I want to do something. And then I work with, you know, law enforcement. I work with average Joes. I've worked with military. It's for everybody. It's just everyone's goals, needs, and wants are going to slightly differ based on interests or what they need to do for work. And again, the only way I can provide that is through private training, because when I teach a class, say I have 30 people, I have women, I have teenagers, I have men, some work in law enforcement, some work a 9-to-5 office job, some are in the military, some work in EMS, some are professional fighters. I can't be like, hey, you do this, you do that, you do this. I can't do that, because I have to teach to the masses at the lowest common denominator, because I need to make sure everyone's being able to grasp and comprehend the material that I am providing to them.
And implement it,
It's just like if you're personal training, right? Are you going to write the same workout for a 115-pound petite female compared to a 225-pound IFBB pro bodybuilder?
Right.
They're going to have two separate workout programs based on needs, wants, goals, right? And realism. And so it's the same thing. And so that's why, like, with my company, I feel that I've been very successful, because I'm able to develop curriculums for every single individual. And then being able to work on it with me directly, right? But
even though the programming itself would be specifically different for each person, do you see that, like, for example, because you're around a lot of active military or veterans or law enforcement that are around PTSD creating scenarios, that now you're giving them a very healthy avenue to do something that can be part of their post-duty or, you know, their retirement, but it's like, it's so good for them mentally as well. Do you deal with a lot of that?
100%. So I've had individuals obviously tell me up front before they start training, like, hey, I suffer from PTSD, whether it's from trauma, just like in regular life, like maybe they were in an abusive relationship, like some of the women that I work with, veterans, obviously, and law enforcement officers. And in that published article specifically for law enforcement, where I talk about holistic benefits of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it was one of the last subsections. I wrote about how there is now studies coming out, and I can add validity to this, to where officers who are training in some form of martial arts, in particular Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's actually reducing their stress mechanism, and they're having less incidents at work.
That makes total sense.
And their home life, they have said this, that their home life has been healthier with their children and with their significant other.
You're giving them a longer fuse.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm giving them an outlet, right? And as someone that cares, right? Because a lot of people, how they deal with trauma or how they deal with stress or anxiety is they're like, I'm just going to go work. They're a workhorse. It's the worst thing you could do. It's not healthy.
Stuff it until they break.
Exactly. And that's what's going to happen. They end up having, that's when we see like substance abuse occur, and especially with law enforcement.
Yeah.
We see substance abuse occur, whether it be alcohol or drugs. And then we see a lot of domestic violence. And we don't want that, obviously. That's not good for the community. It's not good for them as individuals, and it's not good for anybody.
No.
So having that outlet to where they can let out their anger and hurt people without getting in trouble, right? Like rolling or sparring or fighting, maybe they want to go compete, right? That's a good outlet for them. And then having someone there, like myself, that actively listens to like what they're going through, working with them one-on-one, giving them 100% attention, compared to, and I'm just going to use this as an example, someone who works for a boss or an agency department or within the military where they have supervisors or leaders or chain of command that does not care about them.
Right.
They're replaceable.
Right.
I don't take that approach, obviously, because one, that's super narcissistic, conceited, and uncaring, but it's also unhealthy.
I agree.
Everybody matters. I talk about that all the time. Like, I don't care what your background is, as long as you are a good person and willing to learn, I'm willing to work with you. That's it.
I love that.
You know?
Can I make a guess on something?
Sure.
So when you dropped out of school and you went pro and you're only focusing on fighting, then you get to this point, you open up your business, and you get started. If someone had the opportunity to sit across from you for even 10 minutes and listen to your story, your ability to articulate, you convey that really well, so they would have confidence in you and hiring you as an instructor. You haven't said this yet, but did you then decide to go back to school to then gain things that the average person could just look at and give you credibility without them having the ability to hear your story? Is that what?
Correct.
Gotcha.
So it was like threefold as to why I went back to school. So it was in 2020, pre-COVID, because like COVID here, our first lockdown was actually on my birthday. It was April 1st, 2020. Is when the COVID lockdown happened here in Arizona. But it was like January of 2020, I went back to school to finish my associate's degree at Glendale Community College. And I'm still, doing privates and stuff out of my house and trying to teach seminars where I can. And so I focus on school, go back, and I ended up getting my associate's degree. When COVID happened, that was a little weird because it went to online, and I had never done online schooling before, but it actually worked out okay. So I finished my associates, but in the last semester of my associate's degree, I signed up for EMT school at a school called Arizona Academy of Emergency Services. And the reason why I did that, a lot of people ask me, like, well, why do you want to do that? And I was like, honestly, I find medicine very fascinating because my brother was a corpsman in the military, which is like the Navy Marines version of a combat medic. And now he works in the medical field. Professionally very well. And then my mom works, in the pharmacy, my aunt works in the pharmacy, and a lot of my friends had like EMS backgrounds. And I was like, this is really intriguing. And when I was learning about anatomy and physiology as one of my prereqs, I took it as a science credit for my associates. I was like, wow, there's a lot about this that I didn't know about the human body. And I was like, I can use this information and teach better when I'm doing martial arts, because now I can talk about like, hey, this is what this is called, this is how this moves, right? And so when I went through EMT school, man, you get a deep dive into A&P, anatomy and physiology, learning about trauma, medical, all this stuff. So I was able to utilize that information that I was learning and be able to teach it within my already developed curriculums or about to be built curriculums. And it made me more valid when working with someone who has that type of background, or maybe they have a background in kinesiology or something, because now I can kind of talk their language about like biomechanics and stuff. So I graduated with my associates on a Thursday, and then the very following Friday, the very next day, I graduated with my EMT certification. So I thought that was really neat. I immediately signed up for Arizona State University. I was very fortunate. I got scholarships coming from a person who wasn't a very good student in the academia world. I didn't take it very serious. I didn't really apply myself. I actually qualified. I got like scholarships, and then I got a little bit of financial aid. And I was like, wow, this is really neat. So I ended up majoring in criminal justice with a minor in criminology with an emphasis in national security. And then I ended up doing like a Homeland Security certificate there, and they have a human trafficking like 101 and 102 like certification thing. It's for like social workers on how to work with victims of human trafficking. But I just did that because one, I was very intrigued, and two, it could help me with EMS whenever I teach like courses or whatever I'm doing contract work. And so I'm going through ASU. I'm doing my undergrad. I'm still teaching. I'm still feeling the residual effects of COVID, because during COVID, I wasn't able to teach for like 6 months. So I ended up diving into my savings account and racking up credit cards. And that was tough. But the positive note of that is that I was able to focus on academics because I had nothing else to do. And that's what allowed me to become a good student, because I had to buckle down and work on it. I had literally nothing else to do.
Distractions, right.
Exactly. So in my last year at ASU, for my undergrad, I got offered a program that's called a 4+1, which means I'm allowed to do my master's degree while doing my undergrad.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So I graduated with my bachelor's. I graduated with my bachelor's in 5 semesters. I finished my master's degree in 12 weeks.
What?
Yeah, I did it end of summer, and I finished in like November-ish. So it was like...
Was it just a structure that based on how hard you pushed, you could just knock it out?
It was the way that the 4+1 was based, that program that allowed me, because I was taking master level courses during undergrad, but they were counting towards my undergrad and my graduate
so you're
degree.
Doing credit, basically.
Yep, that's why it was called the 4+1.
Sure, that's cool.
So I ended up finishing with my master's ridiculously fast. Like even now when I tell people, when I was like at graduation, because I got recognized for like honors and a leadership award. I graduated like I think it was top 1.9% at ASU, and then in the country it was like 5.7 or something like that. I like
Good for you.
At one point I was at like a 4.16 GPA or something like that. So I ended up graduating undergrad, masters, and still teaching, doing my business, and it's grown a lot. And then with my EMT, while I was in undergrad and master's program, graduate school, I did a lot of advanced level certifications for my EMT. So like I went and did like a live tissue lab. I did like canine training. I went and did like IVs, needle decompressions, like a lot of like advanced stuff that like normal EMTs can't do. And not that I can necessarily practice that, because the way that Arizona works for EMS is like you work under a medical director that sets what the scope of practice is based on X certification. But I ended up getting a lot of my instructor certifications. So I got like my Stop the Bleed instructor cert. I got my tactical emergency casualty care certification. This was like 2021, 2022. So now like I implement pre-hospital medicine into my business so I can teach, law enforcement, military, or just regular everyday Joes. Like, hey, if something happens, whether it's a car accident, a workplace accident, or God forbid, an active shooter, like here is the course of action that you could take, and here's how you do X, Y, and Z to preserve life.
Okay.
So I was doing that while doing my academic studies. I was traveling all over the place. It was super stressful. I remember everyone talks about it. When I was in my master's, my graduate last semester, right before graduation, you have to do your final culmination, which is called a capstone. And I had to do this like 32-page capstone paper. And at that time, I was also working an internship. So I ended up merging the internship that I was working with my business with what my capstone paper needed to be about. So it was cool because I got a lot of assistance. Got a lot of assistance from that. And I was able to knock it out. Wow. That paper ended up getting published. And that is now the like study/practice paper for CRJ 505 at ASU.
Really?
Yeah. So I got 2 papers published there. The other one was for CRJ 553. That was a weapons of mass destruction course. I did my due diligence, used some of my federal contacts, and like interviewed them, and was able to go to some locations where normal people can't go. But it was for school, and I got approval because I knew people that worked there. And I was able to do a full threat assessment on the Palo Verde nuclear generating station out in Tonopah.
Wow.
And that got published, and that was really cool.
So very clear and obvious that when you set your mind to something, you succeed. What determines what you set your mind to?
Interest. It's got to be interest, because how do I explain this? When I was taking,
If you're interested in it and you get good at it, you can make it serve you in some way.
Absolutely.
You don't have to go the route that they tell you this is what you need to do in order to achieve this. You're saying, okay, I'm going to base it off my interests, so I actually enjoy applying myself to it. And then once I master it, I can then make it serve me to some extent and others.
Exactly. An example is I was never, ever good at math. I'm still not good at math. Math is not my thing. I ended up doing graduate school. That was in criminal law. So like reading, writing, speaking, very good at that. Math, science, not so well. So I had to do a lot of tutoring for math. During my associates, I failed my math class. I had to retake it. That was so embarrassing. And my mom is really good at math. So I had her as like my tutor. She's like a wizard at math. And the way she was teaching it to me is she's like, take something that you're interested in and use that as your math equation. So if it's like geometry, right? In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's a lot of angles.
Yeah.
Right. So she's like, utilize your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as your angle measurements for geometry. And then for algebra and things of that nature, she's like, use money. She's like, think of money. Count your quarters, nickels, dimes, etc. If you subtract, add, multiply, divide, what have you. Even with like quadratics, you could still use like financial as the example. And so I had to learn that way. And based off kind of what you were just mentioning is going a not traditional route with learning. Right, making it work for you, not having to do like go to school, try to find a job, etc.
Exactly.
Is if I have something that interests me or something that does not interest me, I'll try to find a way to make it interest me, even if it's not right now. Maybe it's something I can plan for in the future, right? So when I went to EMT school, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go be an EMT. I'm going to go work on the ambulance. This is going to be so cool. No, that wasn't even crossing my mind. I was like, I want to do this because it's something that I want to be able to implement into my curriculums later down the line, be able to do advanced training, schooling. If I make money from it, cool. If not, then it's just something that I can utilize to teach in my already established business. So it's the same thing. I mean, like even taking like some of like the BS classes that you have to take at college. I was like, this sucks. I don't even want to be here. But I was like, hey, maybe this information will become useful later down the line. I'm just going to make the best of it. A lot of it is just having a good attitude. Like there's no point in complaining. If it's something that is out of my control and I can't change it, why am I going to have a panic and anxiety attack over it? Right? And it's a lot of people are control freaks. And I used to be like that. Martial arts helped me a lot where it's just kind of like go with the flow. So yeah.
I think people that fall into that category, as you would call a control freak, it's a coping mechanism to compensate for their insecurities and fears.
Yeah.
I think that's extremely common because if I can control it, I can keep it from going in a direction that makes me uncomfortable.
Exactly. If you want to do a deep dive into that, this is a lot of stuff I've studied. When you have that type of trauma to where you need to try to control something and that is your coping mechanism, that usually falls under the category of narcissism. And that's why people will try to control others, especially in like a leadership role. They're like, no, you can't do that, or you can't say that. It's almost like a tyrannical rule over an individual. It's like a modern day slavery, to be quite frank. Yeah.
Now, where do you think that the practices that come with martial arts, jiu-jitsu, other than your work ethic, like that's an obvious one, what other areas of your life do you see and feel the roots that it's given you to serve you well in your everyday life?
Definitely confidence and self-esteem. I used to shake when I would give presentations, right? I was like so scared of public speaking. I think after like a year of training martial arts, I was like...
Why do you think that helped that?
I think a lot of it has to do... I'll give you like the scientific reasoning and then I'll give you my reasoning.
Okay, I like it.
Obviously, mine is like a feeling and an opinion.
Yes.
So the scientific reasoning behind it is that it builds confidence through failure, right? The moment you step on the mat, it doesn't matter what martial art you're doing, you are not going to be good at it. It doesn't matter what your background is. If you don't have a martial arts background and you start martial arts and you're going to be sparring with people who do martial arts, you are not going to do well.
You're going to fail. Have you seen that video right now that's going viral of Sugar Sean was on that Vic Blends guy's podcast and he said, for those of you who haven't seen it, he's like, how long do you think it would take for you to tap me? And I really liked how Shug answered it. He wasn't like cocky or anything. He was really kind in his response. He's like, I don't know, maybe like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And you could just tell it's the dude's show. Like his pride hurt. Like I don't blame him. 10 seconds. And he's like, come on, man. Like you got to give me more respect than that. It's gonna be more than 10 seconds. And Shug's like, I just think I'd be able to get to your neck. And I think that's probably about right. And he's like, come on, man. No, I got the dog in me. Like, you got to give me more respect than that. And Shug's like, that doesn't really matter if there's no oxygen, you know? And so they're like, all right, let's do this thing. And it's 5 seconds that he had. Now, the dude led with his head and literally put his head in his guillotine and he just sat in it and it was over like that. But I remember, I'll be vulnerable here. I remember when I was boxing, the first time I went into spar, I was that cocky, like meaty douchebag that thought I'm going to come in here and run shit. And I got my ass kicked. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it humbled me so much. And that was also at an age, you know, I'm partying a lot out at the bars, thinking like, you mess with me, I'm going to tear you apart. And going in that ring and getting my ass handed to me humbled me so much. And it really did change like how I handle myself in public situations and things like that. Like with you, like you're a fit built guy, but not the average person gonna look at you or look at the Rock and be like, who's the machine here, you know, because it's all visual perception. Some meathead that's gonna have a bunch of muscles gonna be but it's like you don't know what that person's trained in. And like you just said, if somebody has the reps in, has the knowledge, has the practice in place, they are going to dismantle you. And I think there's a lot of big guys, gym guys, fitness people, athletes that walk around with a false sense of arrogance that they are going to do a much better in that type of scenario than they actually will. And I think it'd be good for all of us. I'll include myself. Thankfully, I'm not that way anymore because I had to learn the hard way. But I think it'd be good for a lot of us to be able to have that dose of humility.
And these are the same individuals that say leave your ego at home, but yet they have the largest ego in the world.
Exactly.
And again, it comes right back down to insecurities, low self-esteem, and narcissism.
Why do you think it is, because I'm following you there, you're getting over your fear of failure when you step in the mat and you experience that then it could help you get over your fear of failing and giving a presentation. But it's a completely different arena. But yet it's still that vertice. It really does. You think it helped in that way?
100%, because you're building confidence, and confidence is across the board. It doesn't need to be direct to anything in particular. Once you have confidence, you can apply that to anything, right? The other one too is, and you mentioned this, the humbleness. You become very humble. You become very like soft-spoken. You're able to. What I say is like you start to actually develop like critical thinking skills because you can't do that when you're narrow-minded. For me personally, what worked for me, and this is going to sound very cocky, very arrogant, but this is what helped me get through like public speaking.
Sure.
Is I was like, well, even if I mess up, people laugh, point fingers at me, I could kick their ass.
I knew you were going to say that.
You know, and like I don't like truly mean that.
Yeah.
But that's like what I would tell myself in my head.
Yeah. But let's unpack that even a little further, because in that moment, if you do fail, they do laugh or whatever, you're not going to get the chance to kick their ass. No. So why do you think that made you feel better? It's just that
That's a good question. I think what a lot of it is because at the end of the day, public speaking, right? School, does that really mean anything? No. What really means something, right? In life, right? If we look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he talks about you need shelter, roof over your head, you need food, you need clean water, and you need security.
Yeah.
If you lose one of those, you got to pick up the rest, right? You got to multiply. And at the end of the day, if, let's say, for example, if everything were to collapse, how would you obtain those needs?
Those things.
Yeah, how would you obtain it?
Survival of the fittest, right?
Correct. And that is what was going through my mind. Is I'm like, I don't even care.
There we go.
If I fail right here.
There we go.
Because if whatever happens, like you'd be holding my hanky.
So what it enabled you to do was to look at the big picture and see that this little moment, although me failing on the mat doesn't completely congruently align to this arena, I still see the big picture instead of the little arena that I'm in right now. And even if I do fail and these people do laugh at me, I'm comfortable with myself enough where I fit into the big picture of things where it really matters, that I don't have to care that much about these people and what they think.
Exactly. And that was still, I mean, I was very immature at that time still. It was still the learning curve. And that was like high school and stuff. As I got into college, I was already very, like, I've already competed on big stages. I've already been on like NBC Sports. I was on different podcasts. I've guest spoke and taught like in different states. So I already had like a lot of public speaking experience and like presenting. And then what ended up changing is I was just like, you know, a lot of this comes with the maturity aspect is if you know, there's times I still mess up and I try to correct myself, you know, if I'm speaking or teaching. And so like if I'm doing it at a university level, you know, there's times where I did mess up and people, I would hear them like chuckle or make comments or whatever. I'd roll with it. I would add to it.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I don't even know why I'm up here. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Own it. Yeah.
Like, who hired this guy? You know what I mean? And then everyone,
the charisma.
You know what they do then? They get quiet.
Exactly.
They get quiet.
Yeah, because you owned it.
Yeah.
It's the Eminem effect. Show them something they don't already know about me, or tell them something. You know, I struggle with that a lot for a long time, to the point I could tell you story after story of extremely humiliating things that happened to me starting in middle school, to the point that like I was sick all the time from anxiety because I didn't even want to go to school because I was so scared, even having to read out loud in class or have to give a presentation.
Wow.
And I didn't have any problem with it whatsoever until one day that I started to give a presentation and my voice started to quiver and I got nervous and I didn't prepare for it. And then I literally walked out of the classroom and I was so humiliated by it. And then I realized how much of my life, uniquely, we are similar as far as at a very early age, we were emotionally aware of some of the things that were going on with us. Even for myself, maybe not even to the extent that you were, but I knew that something had changed. Something had, like, for me to have that moment and then to have that crippling fear kick in, it didn't just happen right then because of one bad experience, which I guess would slightly be possible, but I knew there was something more going on within me. And it wasn't until later being able to look back and understand that so much of my confidence and my value came from performance. And so because I failed so epically at a performance, I felt like I no longer had a right to be there or a value, and that people looked at me as less than. And then I had another time in middle school at a different school that happened to me again. And then when I walked out of the classroom, then I can even name the names of the kids that said it. They all made fun of me like crazy in that next passing period. Like, I heard you got sick, I heard you had to run out of the classroom. And then, of course, that just made it a million times worse because now what you were afraid of could happen, did happen, and now they're talking about it, you know? And I just wanted to disappear, you know? And that's why, like, even when you were talking about those kids that you've helped to now have self-confidence, dude, like, what I feel on the inside of me when I listen to something like that, I want to help those. I wish I could help every single one of them because I know what it's like to be that kid. Yeah. I know what it's like to no longer have the freedom to be a kid anymore. I would literally look at the clock when I'd be home and count down how many minutes were left until I had to go back to school again. And I was so anxious. I still have stomach problems today, 2 decades later, because my stomach was such a mess for so many years because I was so anxious from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed every single day. And even going to bed at night, that's what all I was thinking about was I have to get up in the morning and go somewhere that I'm afraid to go. Yeah. And so the fact that you're making a difference in those kids' life, not just because that one guy made a difference in yours, but to truly take the time and caring to understand these kids and the way that you're helping, dude, I respect you so much for that. And I appreciate you so much for that because it's going to take a lot more than me doing it in these kids' lives. It's going to take a lot more of just than us, people caring enough to say, like, we take it for granted when you're in a good, healthy mental place that you can even just care about the normal things of life, like food and shelter and all those kinds of things. If you're so anxious that you can't even get to the point to even be able to focus on the normal things because you're almost like a prisoner within your own body and anxiety, dude, my heart breaks for those people. And the ability to have that ripple effect, like what you're saying, like those parents come to you and say, my kid's different. And it's not just in this one area. They see it in all these other areas of their life. Those kids are going to end up being able to now make an impact they wouldn't have before. And you're having a ripple effect in so many lives that it's not even just in the parents that come and tell you about it. It's all the vertices that then are offshoots of that you never even are going to hear about.
There's a domino effect.
Exactly.
Because now they're going to be able to be different in any type of relationship that they have going forward, whether that be an intimate relationship, a working relationship, or a friendship.
I built myself up to compensate for a lot of that. I came out of that angry as hell. And I was like, because that's why I knew you were going to say, I kick all your asses. Like, I just want to be at the point where if I knew or thought that I was better than you, then I didn't have to care what you thought about me. You had no power over me anymore. And that worked for a little while.
Yeah.
Until it didn't.
Yeah, because that's not really healthy. It's the wrong way to approach.
But how much do you see that on social media that's what they're teaching?
All the time, but
you get on your algorithm right now, that's what they're teaching, and it's poison, and I hate it. And the reason why I'm passionate about talking about it is because it was a vertex that I explored for years. And I thought I was pulling myself out. And even though I might have been pulling myself out of one scenario, I was digging myself into another one. Because now my appearance or my physical ability or my money or my notoriety or what I drove or the girls or whatever, that became my new crutch to compensate for that broken little boy that was still inside of there. So then getting to the point that I was going to let go of all of that, I had to go through it again. And it was just as scary. I'm just this big guy now that everybody thinks has it all together, that thinks should be super confident, but I was still really broken and insecure on the inside. And so now the only thing that's gotten me to the point where I could let go of that, it's still hard, it's not easy, is God. That's it.
That's good.
To say, God, my identity is fully in you, that I am your son, I am who you say I am. And if someone else wants to discredit me, if someone else wants to make fun of me, if someone else wants to attack me, if someone wants to think negatively about me, does it still hurt? Yeah. Anybody that tells you any differently, that like it just doesn't matter anymore, like you might get so far and matured in it that it's minuscule, but it still matters. Like you're still human, you still have emotion, you feel it. But then what you can do is quickly put it into its proper place so it doesn't dictate and drive your life decisions anymore. It doesn't cause the same effect in your body that it once did, that you actually have the opportunity to heal. So even though I had then turned myself into this guy that everyone thought would then have it all together, I still was the little boy in a grown man's body. I then had to get to the point where I was like, okay, I know I need to still protect that little boy. I need to understand that. But now I need to start seeing myself as the grown man that I am. I am a grown man in a grown man's body. I'm not that little boy anymore.
Yeah.
Even though that I need to keep that in its proper place and recognize it and protect that from a healthy standpoint, I'm not that little boy anymore. And I don't have to be afraid anymore. And I don't have to give weight to other people's opinions and what they think like I used to. If those people want to think that way about me, if those people want to make fun of me, if they don't see me the way I want them to, okay.
Yeah.
And then getting to the point where you ultimately had the freedom to say, no matter what I make, no matter what I have, no matter what I look like those things can all be taken from me. So the only way to like true power that was going to be satiating and long lasting from a longevity standpoint, like you've talked about, was to now find my self-worth and my confidence in things that couldn't be taken away from me.
That's very well said. And that just goes to show like how successful you are now. That doesn't just happen like by chance or by luck. It's through self-awareness, learning lessons, some failures, wins, and having humility. And that is what allows you to be able to run a successful podcast now, is because you're able to utilize active listening.
Can you tell you the truth?
Yeah.
When you said how successful you are now, I don't think I'm successful. I still view myself that way. And I appreciate the compliment and I understand what you're saying, but I'm just being vulnerable. I still feel that way. I still always feel like I need to do and be more in order to achieve or be successful of where I need to be in my head to be accepted. And that goes right back to everything I just said. It's still an ongoing thing.
Are you familiar with the imposter syndrome?
Absolutely. Read the books. Oh, yeah, there's a book right behind you right there. It's by Brenton Manning.
Yeah.
And that book has been game changer for me.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Game changer for me.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're doing everything right, and it's okay to not think that you're successful as long as you don't let that dictate your life.
Exactly.
Right? Don't,
Exactly.
some people, they're like, they're doing very well for themselves, but they're like, this isn't enough. This isn't what I want. And that's when they just,
And that's where it's unhealthy.
they start crashing
Correct.
out.
Correct.
That's when they start, we spoke about this before we started, is like substance abuse, domestic violence, or they start self-harm, even though suicide. It's
because they can control that.
Yeah. And it's, it takes time, but time is not the answer because you still need to do something for it. It doesn't just magically go
It's the
away.
proper process plus time.
Exactly. What a lot of I've found, because obviously, I've gone through like some trauma and stuff, it's self-reflection and then knowing, hey, this didn't really negatively affect me physically. Maybe it's bothering me mentally. What can I do for that? And trying to forget about it's not going to be the right answer because then all you're doing is you're
still thinking about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Think about what are you thinking about? You're thinking about it.
That's what starts developing subconscious anxiety. And that's where we see people when they suffer from panic attacks. And that's why those individuals should probably go seek therapy. They just need someone to talk to, right? They need to be heard.
Exactly right.
Not necessarily that they need a course of action, right? Whether that be medicine, which I'm not for, or doing like a specific program or breathing exercises or something like that. That works for some individuals, but that doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
What I found the majority, and especially for me, is just being heard. And that's what I do with like I was saying, like with my students and stuff, is like, I'll just listen. I turn a knowledge transfer session into a therapeutic session. And I want to add to that is, have you ever taken a class or been a part of like a workout program or something of that nature, maybe like a seminar or a clinic, and the class feels very uncomfortable and it comes from the instructor and the instructor is very aggressive, maybe like a drill instructor, and it doesn't really feel like a safe learning environment?
Absolutely.
Okay. I have too. And so,
And could you read it before it even started? Could you feel it when you walked in the room?
Absolutely.
It's called an empath, right?
yes.
We're
Yes.
the same. I'm the same exact way.
You can feel that energy.
Yep.
What I try to do is, and there are studies with this, where if individuals feel safe and respected, they're able to retain information wholeheartedly and longer.
Is it because they can actually let their hyper alertness come down to the point where they can actually focus on what's being said instead of being so distracted about what's going on around them and making sure the threat that they feel in the room isn't going to end up affecting them?
Correct.
That makes total sense.
Counter to that, like what you were just talking about, is because of increased cortisol levels from stress and anxiety. The adrenal glands are kicking off. Their cortisol's running through their body. They're having that internal dialogue. Like, I don't want to get hurt. I hope this guy doesn't yell at me. I'm worried about this guy over here. Like, especially if you're doing like a smoke session, right? Like a really hard workout, bunch of people there, and then they're running like a drill instructor. And you ever had like that type of instructor? It's like, you could do more, and starts insulting them, belittling them. Like, that, in my opinion, is the complete wrong approach, because not only are you you're causing the stressors in that individual, especially like in an academic environment, like they're not going to be able to retain the information, but from a workout problem, is that's when you're going to start increasing and inducing a lot more inflammation than normally. And so that's going to deteriorate or delay the recovery process.
Sure.
As you know.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You ever done like a super hard workout, but you have a lot going on in life, and you're like, man, I feel more sore than
It's different.
normal.
Yep.
It's from cortisol.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Even for like competitors and stuff that do bodybuilding competitions, if the things in their life, their family, their job, if those things are in a good place and they don't have those external stressors, their body responds better to their training. They're able to produce a better result because of it. You're exactly right.
Yeah. Growth hormone comes from that, man. Like natural growth hormone, like IGF-1, all of that stuff, like an insulin production. If you are stressed and your cortisol levels are through the roof, not only is your hormones going to start tanking, but your body is literally going to start deteriorating. That's why we see people when they have a lot of stress, like they start to lose their hair.
Yeah.
They start having low libido.
Test drops.
Test drops, right? And then they start developing like erectile dysfunction, a lot of joint issues, a lot of the stomach issues that you were talking about. That is caused that the gut health is directly related to cortisol. That bacterium, I believe, is what it's called.
I bet there was one point in my life, if you cut me open, just straight cortisol, just shot at him.
There's tests they can do where they'll take your blood and they can actually test cortisol levels.
Yeah.
But there's not really a course of action for that because there is medication for it, but the side effects are so gnarly.
Right.
Do you still suffer from like a lot of like stress or anxiety or anything?
Not the anxiety, thank God. Stress, having a 3-month-old baby and a 3-year-old.
That's normal stress.
Yeah, but nowhere near like I used to, because we had to face this stuff. We had to unpack this stuff.
Good.
My friend and I were even talking about it last night. It's applicable for both of us because you said it about it's not just time. Time can actually even amplify it if it can make you go backwards if you're still doing the wrong thing.
Yep.
And like for a trauma scenario, like whether it's abuse or something took place or someone hurt you, you can forgive that person, but that person that hurt you when they're around, you can still feel that response in your body. Yeah. And you can even ask God, hey, I want to forgive this person and I'm having a really hard time forgiving him. We need to forgive him. Whether you believe in God or not, forgiving someone is the way you let go of that burden and don't carry that cancer around anymore, because they might even be thinking anymore what they did to you. You're the one that's still hurting and letting them still hurt you.
Yes.
So you got to let go of that.
Great.
But then when you bring God into the equation, you're saying, God, help me forgive them because I'm still really struggling too. And he is helping with you with that. Then I feel like now you're on that path, plus time enables you to then get to that healthy place where you might not have the same kind of reaction in the same type of environment or around that person that caused trauma. But it has to be then, like, the root of it needs to be in place plus time. It's not just the time itself. Because you always hear everybody say that, just time's gonna be your best friend. Time's gonna be your best friend. Not necessarily.
I hate when people say that because they're not giving you a course of action.
Exactly. When my brother died of a drug overdose, it was like 2 years later, and then I drank like a fish, chomped pills to deal with it. You know, I dealt with it in a horrible way. And so I didn't have the right equation to get through it properly. So a couple years later down the road, I'm still struggling with it just as much as I was when it happened. And I even had this pastor look at me one day and say, like, there's something really wrong with you or something like that. And I was just like, how could you say that to me right now? You think that that's what's going to help me? You think that that's what I need to hear? I need to hear what the path to healing is. And you need to take the time to actually understand while I'm still in the place that I am, and not just be, oh, you're not able to get over this because you haven't let go of something. Like, there's so much more under that surface to not just put someone in a category that already has experienced some kind of trauma. You could even amplify their trauma now because they're looking inward, like, what the hell's wrong with me that I can't get over this? And then they go compensate with another substance or something else because they're still just as miserable and they think there's something wrong with them and there is no hope. That hope is everything.
That's why it's super important to take advice from individuals who have been in the same shoes as you. Just because someone has the title, instructor, psychologist, therapist, pastor, it does not mean that they are qualified to do what needs to be done for X individual.
You're exactly right.
You know, and that's no disrespect to anyone who has those jobs.
No, you're not saying that at all.
No, I'm just saying that a title does not mean anything, because at the end of the day, it's human-to-human contact, right? It's, are you a good human? Do you have those active listening skills? And if you don't know how to help someone, you know, first off, tell them, be like, hey, I don't know how to help you with this. Let me recommend you to X, Y, and Z. Or, hey, if you just need someone to vent to, man, give me a call.
Let's use you as an example. When I said earlier, can I make a guess? You already had the expertise. You already had the experience. You went and got the credentials to help give you more validation for someone that wants to look and see that, to give you the opportunity to then show who you really are once you're with them. Just because you have the credentials, though, doesn't mean you had the first part. So there's a lot of people that have those credentials, but they don't have the experience and don't know what it's like. Yeah. So that might get them the at-bat, but you need to be able to quickly read in that scenario. Does this person have the experience to give me the advice to get me where I want to go? Or are they still stuck where I am? Because I don't want to take advice from someone that I don't want their life.
One thing I do whenever I have potentially a new client, or if someone wants to host me for a seminar, or it doesn't matter if I'm working with like a department or an agency or like a 501c3 or a private business that wants, you know, X, Y, and Z training, I always set up like a 30-minute like consulting thing, completely free, you know, and it's not necessarily breaking the bread. I call it a vibe check. I want to make sure that I'm a good fit for you.
You're feeling their energy.
But I want to make sure you're also a good fit for me, because I don't want to be associated with scumbags. You know what I mean? Just because you have X amount of money and you're going to
just
pay
you can pay me, right?
I'm not in it for that. That doesn't do me service.
I love that. I love that. Absolutely.
And it's not worth my energy, my time. Like, I don't, like, just like personal training, it's a super saturated market. There's instructors for everything. There's personal trainers, there's coaches, there's everything, right?
Especially now with social, coach of coaches. Everybody's a coach.
The main reason why I do it is because I wish that more instructors did that when I was primarily a student. I'm always a student.
Yes.
But at one point, I was a full-time student, whether it be academia, martial arts, etc. I wasn't really full-time instructor yet. I wish that I was able to meet with these instructors one-on-one, even if it was just a phone call, just to like conversate, get to know them just a little bit and see like, hey, how do you teach? How does this differ from X individual? I wish that would have been awarded to me as an opportunity when paying for a service, because I have attended multiple clinics and seminars and courses from experts that on paper, they're an expert. I mean, you could watch them perform and they are very good. They do not know how to teach. They are the worst teachers I've ever had. And that's one of the things that I have found, at least in my opinion, that individuals who are really good at the application of doing something are not good at the instruction. And
what do you think made you different? Because you're good at both.
Man, that's tough. Learning from a lot of different instructors, having at an early age, developing critical thinking skills, and then going through academia, not just for like criminal justice, criminology, law, medicine, but like culmination of everything I was doing, even on my downtime trying to read. Like I got really big into like psychology, philosophy. I got really big into like the study of flow state. I spent like 6 months studying flow state. And that's like a lot of like anatomy, physiology, the hormones, etc. And I think just being open-minded and having the attitude that, hey, I'm a student myself. I'm still trying to figure this stuff out. I'm not an expert. On paper, maybe I'm a subject matter expert for like XYZ type stuff, but I don't call myself that. One, I think it's corny. But two, like I'm still learning. It's always an ongoing process. There's always going to be new information and new studies coming out, and I want to be a part of that. And so when I'm working with these individuals, like I try to regurgitate that information to them. Like, hey, well, I'm on the same path you are. That's why I want to help you, because we can help each other.
You just nailed, because I was going to try to take a stab at it, and I wanted you to go first. I think what's made you good at both is that you even explained it when you started telling your story in the beginning as to why you chose the path that you did. So now, because you care when you work with someone, instead of trying to fit them into a box, you understand what makes them tick. And then on top of that, the fact that you're an empath and can read someone's energy, you can also pair what you're getting out of them as a read that you're getting from them as they're telling you what makes them tick, and then you combine that info, and then you can steer them in the direction that they're wanting to be guided at.
It's funny that you say that, because I don't think about that, but when you were saying that, like examples were popping up in my head, and I was like, wow, okay, that hit, because I've done that. That has happened. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good take.
What is legacy to you, and what do you want your legacy to be? And we'll finish with that.
Oh man, legacy to me, I mean, I guess something that you can leave behind while you're gone. What would I want my legacy to be eventually? Obviously, you have physical and non-physical, right? Physical is something that you can touch. The other one is not. Physical, obviously one day I want to have a family, right? Wife, kids, grandkids, the whole nine, of course. Like, why wouldn't you want that? Non-physical, just for people to remember that, like, not anything like egotistical, but just like Nick was able to help me and help others. That's it. But I want them to be able to take the information that I provided for me to help them, to then use it to help other people.
There's your ripple effect.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for me to be like an idol one day, or like a god or anything like that. Never ever. It's not me. But if I can help one person and they can help others, which has already happened and is still continuing to happen right this moment, if that just can continue and continue and continue, and everybody starts to develop that community effect, that tribe effect. A lot of people use that word loosely. When I use it, I mean it seriously. Like, I want to build that
tribe effect has become a marketing ploy now. I know. It's frustrating.
And like,
they took something really beautiful and they perverted it to be something that was a marketing tactic. I hate that. I know.
I hate it.
I know.
So that's why, like, when I say that, I'm like, I got like emphasis on it.
Sure.
Like I truly mean that, and that's what I would like for legacy.
Because tribe means you feel like you belong. You can let your guard down. You feel safe. You can be heard. And then you can take the risk of failing without feeling like you're going to be ridiculed for it. And that's your tribe.
And then you add the community aspect, willing to help and take care of each other.
Yes.
Even if there is no anything in return.
That's right.
Right? It's just doing it because you're a good person and you care about that individual. And even if you don't care about that individual because you don't know that individual, it's just doing it out of good faith and goodwill.
It's the principle.
Exactly.
Right. You know, I ask this question to almost everybody at the end. And I love when I get an answer from the person and I can truthfully look across the table from them and say, I already see you doing it. You're going to be a great dad.
Thanks.
You're going to have a great family. And the fact that you're already making a ripple effect, your legacy is being put into place right now. It's happening, just like you said. As we sit here, you've already impacted lives and they're impacting others and you're just getting started.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for doing this with me today.
Yeah, of course, man.
I've really, really enjoyed this. I knew I was going to. Thank you guys so much for watching another episode. Do me a favor, Push-Ups for Poverty is going to be wrapping up here after the holiday season. This is the time of year that, like with Thanksgiving, you're supposed to take the time to reflect on what you're thankful for. And no matter what type of life position that we are in, we still have very, very much to be thankful for. And there are a lot of people that aren't as fortunate as we are. And this Push-Ups for Poverty initiative that we're putting together is raising money to feed vulnerable children in Africa. And if you guys would be so kind as to even just $1, $10, whatever you can do, go to pushupsforpoverty.org. I'm going to be doing a push-up for every $10 that's raised. I think we're at just under $4,000 so far, so about 400 push-ups.
That's awesome.
But I want to have to do 40,000 push-ups, and we'll get all the guys in on it and split it up and record that and post. So if you guys take the time to go look at that, I'd really, really appreciate it. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you in the next episode.